Sip and Talkers. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever time zone you happen to be in right now. Welcome back to Sip and Talk.
We are so thrilled to have you here.
Yes, absolutely thrilled to have you with us today. But, okay, look. We need to just address the elephant in the room right out of the gate.
Oh boy, here we go.
I know. I will be the first to admit it. I am a little nervous, but also, if I'm being completely honest...
Playfully unrepentant.
Exactly. Playfully unrepentant. Because our show has recently been, well, let's just use the word targeted by some very, very vocal listeners.
Targeted is a very polite way to put it. Our inbox has been completely overflowing.
It really has. And look, I get it. We constantly claim on Sip and Talk that we do not discriminate against any country, any group, or any people. And yet
you chose that thumbnail.
I did. For our recent topic, I chose a highly, highly provocative thumbnail image.
It definitely caused quite a stir in the comments section.
That is the understatement of the year. I mean, you all know the image I'm talking about. It features this massive crying baby wearing these incredibly slick aviator sunglasses, pointing an accusatory, chubby little finger straight toward the West.
And all of this set against a backdrop of floating COVID-19 virus particles over a map.
Right. Now, I will raise my hand and say, from a purely aesthetic standpoint, I just thought it had incredible dramatic tension.
It certainly grabs the eye.
It does. You want to click on it. But the comments, wow. People were incredibly offended. So I'm going to need you to throw me a lifeline here. Help me justify this aesthetic choice before the internet completely cancels us.
Well, let's push up our metaphorical glasses for a second and completely reframe this situation.
Please do.
Because if we look at this through the lens of semiotics...
Ooh, semiotics, the study of signs and symbols.
Exactly. Through that lens, this image isn't actually what people think it is. It is not an insult about anyone's intelligence, and it is certainly not just depicting a random meaningless tantrum. What's fascinating here is that this thumbnail serves as a brilliant visual metaphor for strategic emotional expression.
Strategic emotional expression.
Yes. It perfectly captures this massive global trend we are seeing right now across international relations, which scholars are calling the memification of diplomacy.
The memification of diplomacy. Okay, let's unpack this for the listener, because you might be wondering why you, sitting at home or driving your car to work right now, should care about a crying baby in aviators.
Right.
Well, it's because we are currently living in a post-truth era. International relations used to be this incredibly stiff, formal arena, right?
Very formal. Diplomats in tailored suits using highly measured language.
Exactly. But honestly, it often looks like a global kindergarten right now. And by understanding the layers of this specific image, you are going to learn how to decode the absurdity management of modern geopolitics.
Because once you see the pattern of how governments are communicating today, you really can't unsee it.
Totally.
So let's deconstruct the very first layer of this image, which is the giant crying baby itself. Let's do it.
When people see a baby in a political cartoon, the immediate knee-jerk assumption is that it represents immaturity.
Sure.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture of global affairs, the baby doesn't represent a lack of maturity. Instead, it signalizes a society's hypersensitivity.
Hypersensitivity.
Yes, specifically when it is placed under extreme external pressure combined with massive internal expectations. It's basically a visual representation of a societal pressure cooker blowing its lid.
Wait, let me make sure I'm following this. Are you arguing that multi-trillion-dollar governments and highly organized states are actually utilizing a victim mentality on purpose?
Yes.
Because that seems incredibly risky on the global stage. How does that actually translate into a working policy?
It seems risky, but it's actually incredibly common right now.
Okay.
It is the return of great power emotions.
Okay.
Modern geopolitics has become deeply, deeply emotional. For instance, there's some fantastic reporting we reviewed from the New York Times on the rise of nationalist sentiments that really highlights this dynamic.
What did they find? They noted that when a country's experiencing a rapid economic or military rise, but that rise is accompanied by deep historical insecurities.
Like a feeling that they were wronged in the past.
Exactly. The reaction on the global stage is also this incredibly potent mix of a victim mentality combined with strong counterattacks. It's not a calculated chess move. It's a primal cry to be heard and respected.
So it's less about strategic maneuvering and more about demanding validation.
It's the geopolitical equivalent of screaming, "Pay attention to me and acknowledge my worth right now."
Wow.
And structurally, This serves as a massive compensation mechanism. Think about how massive bureaucratic systems work.
They're usually pretty slow.
Right. When rational channels fail, when quiet diplomatic back channels or trade negotiations hit a brick wall, entities resort to primitive, loud emotions to demand resources.
And crying is the most primitive, effective demand for attention we have as human beings.
Exactly. What's fascinating is that this isn't just an isolated political strategy. It's a global trend being actively driven by our media ecosystem.
Right, because the platforms we use to communicate are literally designed so that whoever cries the loudest gets the reward.
Whoever throws the biggest digital tantrum gets the most traffic, the most airtime, and ultimately the most leverage.
You know, I noticed in some of the sociological readings we pulled for today, there is a mention of Christopher Lasch's work.
Yes, the culture of narcissism.
Right. I know in his book he talks a lot about society pushing individuals toward a state of childish dependence. But how does a sociological theory from the 1970s connect to modern governments acting like crying babies today?
It connects perfectly because Lasch saw exactly where the structural incentives were heading. He argued that modern society conditions entities to feel aggrieved when they don't get exactly what they want, instantly.
They lose the ability to self-soothe.
Yes, or to compromise. Falling back into a state of childish dependence on external validation. Now, apply that to a whole nation-state. We are seeing governments condition their own populations to feel constantly aggrieved by the outside world. And the economic data we looked at backs this up perfectly.
The Bloomberg analysis.
Right. Bloomberg published a fascinating analysis showing that since 2018, over 55% of new global trade barriers are fundamentally rooted in a victim logic.
A victim logic. What does that actually look like in practice? Because a tariff is just a tax. It's numbers on a spreadsheet. How can a spreadsheet be emotional?
That's the core of the shift. Historically, a tariff was a mathematical protective economic tool.
You tax imported steel so your local steel industry can survive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But these new compensatory tariffs are essentially saying, you hurt my feelings, or you didn't treat me with the respect I deserve, so I'm slapping a tax on your goods as a punishment.
The financial instrument is traditional, but the justification for using it is entirely emotional.
And retaliatory. It's a structural manifestation of a crying baby demanding a bottle, using billions of dollars in international trade as the tears.
That is wild to think about. Okay, which brings us to the next layer of this highly controversial thumbnail, the accessories.
The aviators.
I have to admit, the aviator sunglasses are my absolute favorite part of the image. The crying baby is one thing, but slapping a pair of slick, Top Gun-style aviators on it, that changes the entire vibe of the picture.
It really does. It's a massive leap from simple victim psychology into full-blown meme diplomacy.
Meme diplomacy.
Yeah, the sunglasses represent a very specific attitude, an arrogant, defensive confidence. It's a refusal to be defined by old, established world orders.
That makes total sense. Think about what sunglasses do in interpersonal communication. When you put them on, you are hiding your eyes.
You're blocking the other person's ability to read your vulnerability.
It's a shield. You can't see where I'm looking, but I can see you perfectly.
Precisely. It says, I might be crying, I might be demanding things, but I'm doing it on my own terms. And I completely refuse to care about your traditional standards of decorum.
It's projecting power while simultaneously playing the victim.
Which is a very modern contradiction.
And then there's the action in the image.
Yeah.
The baby isn't just sitting there passively. It's actively pointing a chubby finger straight toward the West.
Right.
When I picked the image, I just liked the aggressive framing, but you're saying this isn't just a random provocation.
No, it is a brilliant visual representation of a battle for narrative power. It's this concept in cultural studies known as the reverse gaze.
The reverse gaze.
For centuries, the West has maintained this traditional parental attitude toward the rest of the world, setting the global rules, handing out the economic grades.
Telling developing nations how to behave and govern themselves.
Exactly. The pointing finger is mocking that established dynamic. It's essentially saying, we reject your authority to judge us. In fact, you are the problem.
Turning the parental gaze back on the parent.
Exactly.
But I want to be really careful here because we got accused of targeting a specific region. Is this defensive pointing, this angry baby posture, just a tactic used by one specific country or region, or is this a broader issue?
That is an incredibly important question, and I want to provide a crucial fact check right here to ensure we maintain our balanced perspective.
Great.
This posture is absolutely not unique to one nation. It is a contagion. If we look at the analysis provided by Foreign Policy magazine, They noted that the polarization and emotional sensory index of global diplomatic rhetoric has risen by an astonishing 40% in just the last decade alone.
A 40% jump? How do they even measure an emotional index in diplomacy?
Researchers actually analyzed the specific language used in official press releases, state media, and diplomatic cables.
Oh, tracking the actual words.
Right. They track the increase in exclamation points, the use of ad hominem attacks.
Meaning attacking the person rather than the policy.
Yes. And the frequency of highly emotive adjectives compared to dry, factual statements. The data shows this memification of diplomacy is everywhere.
So the adults have literally left the room across the globe.
Pretty much. We saw it heavily present during the Trump era in the United States, where diplomacy was frequently conducted via capitalized, highly emotional social media posts rather than quiet meetings.
Right.
And we also see it constantly in recent European Union disputes. You'll have member states publicly shaming each other over border policies or budgets using highly emotive, dramatic language designed for domestic news clips.
Rather than relying on quiet, gentlemanly logic to solve the issue.
It is a global trend of abandoning the measured, nuanced language of traditional statecraft in favor of emotional, low-age propaganda.
Okay, so we've tackled the baby, the glasses, and the pointing finger, but now we have to talk about the background.
The background.
This is where my anxiety really kicked in over the weekend, because the background of the image features these floating COVID-19 virus particles.
Right.
And the immediate reaction from a lot of people in our inbox was, you are stigmatizing a global disaster. You are pointing fingers about the origin of the virus.
Yeah, that hit a nerve.
Honestly, when I saw those comments, my stomach dropped. Did we cross a line?
I understand the anxiety, and it's good that we are self-reflecting, but let's take a deep breath and look at this philosophically. There is a profound defense for that visual choice.
Okay.
The background of that image isn't about the origin of the virus at all. The virus particles represent what psychologists call a survival threat limit environment.
A survival threat limit environment. That sounds intense. So, meaning a situation where our very existence feels threatened and we feel we have absolutely zero control over the outcome.
That's it exactly. And psychologically, we know what happens when human beings face a massive, uncontrollable disaster like a global pandemic.
We panic.
We experience a phenomenon called regression. We revert. We lose our complex adult coping mechanisms.
Our ability to use nuance, patience, and empathy.
Exactly. And we regress to a childlike state of paranoia. We seek absolute safety, and when we realize we can't find it, our brains demand scapegoats.
I want to dig into that, because if the background is less about the biological disease itself and more about the environment of absolute panic that the disease created, that changes everything.
It does.
It reminds me of the World Health Organization warnings we read about the infodemic. They were saying we weren't just fighting a biological virus, we were fighting an information virus.
Yes. The virus wall in the background of the thumbnail doesn't represent a lab or a wet market. It represents that toxic cloud of misinformation, panic, and blame that blanketed the globe.
There was that commentary published in The Lancet that we looked at regarding the political interference in science during the pandemic.
The Lancet piece was a very sobering read.
It really outlined how bad things got.
It highlighted how, in this environment of an infodemic and a survival threat, nations entirely lost their scientific objectivity. Politicians started hijacking scientific podiums.
They acted exactly like giant babies.
Exactly. The rational scientists were pushed to the sidelines and the geopolitical toddlers took over, using science as a weapon to score political points, rather than a tool to advance public health.
Okay, I was thinking about this last night, and I think I have a great everyday example that really crystallizes this concept.
I'd love to hear it.
It is exactly like a toddler who accidentally spills their glass of milk on the kitchen floor.
Okay.
A mature adult or a mature political entity would see the spilled milk, go grab a paper towel, wipe it up, and figure out how to pour it more carefully next time.
Makes sense.
But a toddler in a state of psychological regression spills the milk, immediately points at the kid sitting next to them, and cries at the top of their lungs, "He made me do it."
That is the absolute perfect analogy.
Right. That is the essence of the baby pointing west against a virus backdrop. It's not about who actually spilled the milk in the first place. It's about the instinctual, panicked need to shift the blame to someone else when reality gets too messy to handle.
Which perfectly brings us to the defense of satire itself, and why it is actually vital that we use provocative images like this.
Yeah.
We are engaging in what we call absurdity management.
Absurdity management. Let's reframe the aesthetic of Sip and Talk right now for anyone listening who still feels on the fence. We are not engaging in hate speech.
No.
We are absolutely not discriminating against any specific genes or national traits or ethnic backgrounds. We are targeting policies. We are targeting bureaucratic systems and diplomatic behaviors.
Precisely.
When the behavior of a multi-trillion-dollar government entity resembles a toddler throwing a tantrum over spilled milk, we are going to point that out because it is absurd.
And we have to point it out because humor is a historical stress test for power.
Right.
If you look at the long tradition of political satire, from publications like Charlie Hebdo in France to television programs like The Daily Show, the ultimate goal is always to pierce rigid official rhetoric.
Because sometimes the truth is just ridiculous.
When official government press releases are completely divorced from reality, when the reality on the ground is actually more absurd than a meme, humor becomes the only scalpel sharp enough to cut through the noise.
This show is merely a transporter and translator of absurd phenomena.
We see the absurdity in the world, and we translate it into a visual or conversational format that you can actually digest without losing your mind.
And we are an equal opportunity satire machine.
Absolutely.
To prove our balanced international perspective, let's brainstorm some future thumbnails right now so we don't get trapped in any echo chambers. We don't just critique one side of the map.
Let's hear your ideas.
If we do a conversation on quantitative easing or the seemingly endless theatrical debates over the debt ceiling, I can totally picture a thumbnail of a giant American baby.
Oh boy.
Wearing a diaper made out of treasury bonds, literally drowning in a massive pile of freshly printed cash while playing with a matchbook.
Oh, I can already see the comments on that one. It would be brilliant. Or if we want to look at the European Union, how about an EU baby holding a plastic baby bottle, but wearing a very stiff, formal Brussels business suit?
A business suit baby.
And it's crying hysterically because it's trying to enforce incredibly strict, contradictory green energy policies while simultaneously holding a jerry can of imported fossil fuels just to keep the lights on in the nursery.
Oh, I love that. The business suit baby with the jerry can. It perfectly captures the contradiction of trying to look like the mature, moral adult in the room while enacting policies that conflict with basic geopolitical reality.
The point is, the satire applies universally because the need for absurdity management is required globally.
Exactly.
The reversion to emotional, meme-driven diplomacy isn't an isolated incident in one hemisphere. It is the new standard operating procedure for global affairs.
So what does this all mean? Let's bring it all together for the Sip and Talkers. To summarize, the thumbnail that caused all this uproar over the past few days wasn't malicious.
Not at all.
It wasn't discriminatory. It was, in a very real way, a social experiment. It was a visual observation on the low ageification of diplomacy in our modern post-truth era.
And honestly, looking at the engagement, it worked.
It really did. It got people talking, it got people reacting, and it led us to this incredibly deep discussion today. So I'm just going to say it. We are going to continue to use sharp, provocative images on this show.
We definitely are.
But we are always, always going to back them up by delivering deep, objective discussions based on verifiable facts.
And this is the perfect time for a very clear disclaimer. We want to explicitly state that our show does not criticize or discriminate against any country, any group, or any people.
Never.
We merely provide objective facts and sociological frameworks to spark exploration and discussion. We are constantly reminding you to always practice independent and critical thinking.
Don't just take our word for it.
And certainly don't just take a meme's word for it. Look at the structures underneath the news. We've spent this entire time dissecting human leaders acting like toddlers.
Yes, we have.
But here is a new wrinkle. If meme diplomacy and emotional regression are the new standard for human leaders, what happens when artificial intelligence systems start playing a larger role in managing our foreign affairs?
Oh, wow.
Will these advanced algorithms learn to automate our geopolitical tantrums because that's the data we are feeding them? Or will AI end up being the only rational adult left in the room?
Oh, that is terrifying, but fascinating. An automated algorithmic tantrum. That is such a great question to keep in the back of your mind. It really changes how you read the news and how you view the future of technology and diplomacy.
It really does.
Well, Sip and Talkers, that is all the time we have for today. If you enjoyed this conversation and you want to keep exploring the absurdity of the world with us, please make sure you hit that subscribe button for Sip and Talk so you never miss out. We absolutely love having you in our community.
We really do.
A quick shout out After decoding all this heavy, high-stakes, geopolitical absurdity, you probably need a healthy way to mentally escape and decompress.
I know I do.
You absolutely have to check out our old friend Mickey's YouTube channel, Mickey to Life. His latest short video features some incredible travel vlog highlights, and let me tell you, it leaves you wanting more. It is the absolute perfect psychological palate cleanser after a heavy discussion about global pressure cookers.
It really is beautifully shot. I highly recommend checking his channel out if you need a break from the news cycle.
All right, everyone, stay curious, keep your metaphorical sunglasses handy, and we will cheerfully see you next time. Goodbye.
Take care, everyone.